And good morning. Oh my goodness. I'm so happy to see you. And I am even more excited for you to see somebody else that we've brought in today. This is going to be such a power packed session. And so please answer the question that we put in the chat. The question is, do you know your core? That would be the top 3 values. And we're going to talk about this with literally the queen of values. I know that sounds really crazy, and she's probably like all back there, all embarrassed and everything. But literally, this woman, right here, this woman, Courtney Addy, is an executive coach who I have the great pleasure and fortune of working with, and so do my clients. And we really get down to some very important reasons why core values are such an important navigator and accelerator in your search. Thank you, Courtney, for being here. I couldn't be happier to have you talk about this. So please briefly tell us how core values became such a thing for you, especially in your career, but also just like, how did they come up? How did
Yeah.
you stumble across this?
It's interesting. For me, my core values have been hiding in plain sight for a very long time. And good morning, everyone. Lauren, it's such a gift to be here. And I've loved getting to know your clients through their values and what makes them so remarkable. But for me, for years we've heard Simon Sinek talk so much about purpose, right? And if you walk into purpose like super cold, it's a really hard thing to figure out. And usually understanding your why can be such a generative thing to understanding how to navigate and where to go. And it wasn't until a friend of mine brought a little deck of cards and said, hey, here's this thing I want to introduce to you. And I was so resistant. I was like, values, what are values? Why does that matter? And it's so funny because on the other side of that resistance, right, me leaning into the discovery of my own values, using them to figure out how to make a massive career pivot from being in corporate into deciding to be, a full-fledged entrepreneur and coaching was really sort of designed and informed by my values.
Okay, like it was designed and informed by your values. And I see a lot of like people doing a shout out here. Denise Senna, what are yours? Denise, like I know my 3 core values thanks to Courtney Addy. And Barbara, so good to see you. So we're gonna talk about the designing and the informing, because what's really fascinating about this is that I don't think, and I mean, it sounds like that's the same for you, that values were a thing as part of your job search, right? Like we all know, oh yeah, I got to update my resume. Oh yeah, I've got to go interview. Like those things are central. But honestly, as we understand the world of work today, the future of work tomorrow, help us understand like really what is happening. Why is it so crucial for people who are in their careers to identify and understand their values in their search? And even the question that I'm going to also ask that comes up all the time, are your personal and professional ones, like, are they the same? Are they different? How do those things work?
All right, so here we go. So let's talk first a little bit about what core values are, right? Our core values are like these juicy little internal navigating systems for us. And we only have 3, we only have 2 or 3. And fundamentally, they inform our actions, our behavior, but most importantly, our behaviors inform how we make decisions, how we individually make decisions. If you're in a company or an organization, how that organization makes decisions. And that's a really important distinction, because whether or not you have them at a level of consciousness or unconsciousness, they're still guiding you, right? And so it's important as you think about the career process, how to retrieve them, right? How to go and find them. Mine have been hiding in plain sight, to go get them, to pull them to the surface, and then understand then how you can articulate whether it's your unique value proposition or how you make decisions or how you are actually, we talk about this all the time, unique and remarkable. I was working the other day with a client who just clicked it together so beautifully, right? We see so many people get all the way through the interview process, and at the very end, they're like, I didn't get the job. And usually it's because they aren't really able to convince or articulate who they are, why they act the way they act, the decisions that they make, and the problems that they know how to solve. And we had a client the other day, I won't disclose who she is, but she came up with her 3 values, and they were growth, creativity, and making a difference. And from there, we were able to say, okay, how do those values show up in your purpose? Now, your purpose is different from your values. Your purpose is basically your central mission or goal, right? Your values are inform your behaviors, your identity, your corporate culture, and how you make decisions. And they work together really nicely. And I find that it's easier to first retrieve your values, then design your purpose, and then figure out how to communicate the problems that you get really excited that you know how to solve, right? And so in moving from
hiding in plain sight, Courtney helped me bring to the surface my top core values.
Oh, there she is. There's my girl. There's my girl, right? And Regina, you said your purpose, right, after finding your values, was to anticipate the needs of an organization so that you can design creative solutions to accelerate their ability to make a difference. And so any conversation that Regina goes into, knowing her values, knowing her purpose, and then being able to articulate the problems that she knows how to solve, what she can anticipate, right? How she designs creative solutions, and then how they make a difference or how they make an impact. There is your, like, you know, that is going to help you navigate to the problems you want to solve, to the ones that you've solved before, in a way that you can just go out into the world and nail the search process. They'll help you navigate through.
And I have to say, I was also a skeptic. I was also like, I don't know about these values things, but I have seen your work and I've seen the impact on clients. So it is stunning. So now that we have a basis for what values are and how they impact and inform decisions, you mentioned, and I know that this, like I said, this comes up a lot. People are like, well, I have these values for my personal life and these values for my professional life, and help us understand, like, is that
there's no difference. There's no difference, right? And this is where a lot of the resistance and a lot of the fear and a lot of the conflict comes into play, right? Your personal and professional, your values don't change based on the environment or context in which you are operating in, right? They're the exact same in your professional life as they are in your personal life. And where I feel that we get into resistance or some fear in the situation is when we are trying to, right, lean into the organizational values, right? If an organization has stated their values on a website in a various way, we're trying to basically get alignment. Values are all about alignment, aligning who we are and lights us up with the right environment and context for where we are operating, where we are working, where we are contributing, right? And so what happens is, and we talked about a little bit, you asked me to talk a little bit about values in conflict, right? The conflict comes up when our core values are not in alignment, not with what the stated values are of an organization or an environment, but the behaviors that are being represented by that organization, right? Values, right, are our behaviors, our actions, the way that we make decisions. They're rooted deeply in our human experience, right? And I know this, like Lauren, abundance is one of your values. Abundance is one of my core values. But how we define that value and how that shows up for us and how we want to look through that as a lens to navigate and make decisions is different based on how you've experienced abundance or scarcity in your life, and similar for me. But no, the environment that we are in does not impact, right, our values. They're the same in our personal and professional lives.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And also the note and the nod to values conflicts, because you've seen it firsthand. I've seen it firsthand. People find themselves in positions and they're like, well, I read this job description and they said that their values were this, but then they find that the behaviors are not what it's stated on the wall, and that becomes also where the values get into conflict. They find themselves unhappy, or much less like intolerable with whatever is happening in that culture. So I love this quote that Rachel put in here. It's not hard to make decisions when you know what your values are. And I think that that is clearly hidden and also secret sauce to how to really drive that activity, not only in your search, but also throughout your career and in your personal life too, right?
And I'll give you a little tip in terms of, if you're brave enough in the interview process to take what companies and organizations paid a lot of money to write on their website and generally are mostly obtuse. There's a woman by the name of Dr. Melissa Peet, who I have actually incorporated a lot of her generative knowledge and inquiry coaching techniques into the value exercises that I've done. And Denise pointed that out. It all started, Denise was in the room where it happened, where I incorporated this coaching technique into the harvesting and the discovery of values that are hiding in plain sight. But most corporations, and I'm not going to embarrass them at the moment, I was looking through a couple websites in preparation for this meeting, right? They have a list of values. They've got 5, they've got 8. And I think it's Jim Collins who basically said, if you have more than 3 priorities, then you have none at all, right? Your employees deserve to understand how you make decisions in an organization. And again, right, your values are based on your behaviors, and your behaviors are based on how other people are experiencing you. So if you want to be really bold and pressure test, right,
yes,
how a company shows up with their values, ask them, right? And let me just back up for a second. There's 5 different generations in the workplace right now, right? Which is causing a ton of conflict, because based on the experiences of each of those generations, their values are vastly different, right? So corporations are trying to figure out how to drive this alignment in their organization across 5 different levels of experience.
totally.
And they're not understanding the tools that are hiding right there in order for them to tap. And the other one is like diversity inclusion right now. Everybody is having that as a core value, right? But how are those behaviors showing up, right? So if that's important to you to really walk into, right, an organization that walks the talk, right? Here's the question, right? What does diversity and inclusion look like when you show up to work on a Monday morning? Okay.
Bam.
Ask that question, figure out what they say, look for the behavior, understand, right? How do you leverage diversity and inclusion as a core value to make decisions in this company, right? Those 2 questions will help you really understand if that is a core value of yours in an organization that you're looking to work in, how they show up behaviorally.
Oh my gosh, this is so important, because many of you have heard me talk about sniff testing, right? How are you looking for, quote unquote, where the dead bodies are, and or like, who the blank are these people anyway? Do not rely on rhetoric that is on a corporate website, even in a job description. You need to really know if and integrity is one of my core values, if their words and their actions are talking to each other and are demonstrated throughout their actions, because otherwise that is known as lip service. That's just a bunch of crap. And I think that we all have fallen into that pattern of saying, well, they said this and they said that. No, you really want to know. So the next question is really about how if you are in the search, how do you articulate these values in a seamless way throughout your conversations, in your resumes, on your LinkedIn? Because you're not going to just like say, oh, and by the way, it has to be integrated to your earlier point. How do you take them and make them so that they become part of you and they become actionable and valuable in the process?
Yeah, well, it comes back to like sort of how you're telling the stories of the problems that you solve, like looking for that alignment. Most companies are going to show you, right, what their values are, right? They're going to list that in a job description, or you can go out and you can find that on a website, right? So you're going to know the types of things, right? And you're going to be able to look and sniff test for that alignment sort of straight out of the gate, right? But from there, once you understand what your values are and you've developed your purpose, again, going back into those PARs, right? The problems you know how to solve, in the context you know how to solve them, the actions that you take and have taken in the past, and the results that you've gotten, right? You teach this to the clients at Portfolio Rocket like all the time, like understanding, right? And how to get that alignment, right? Does the company that you're looking to be a part of, right, have the problems that you uniquely know how to solve? And can you show up, not necessarily in alignment, right? And demonstrate, in some of these job interviews, like, right, you're on your toes, but when you're deeply ingrained and aligned with telling your story through harnessing this, it becomes so much easier. Your energy is aligned. You're not necessarily going to be as nervous because you're confidently standing in like what is fundamentally your inner compass, right? Dr. Pete, we talked about her earlier, right? She says when you when you have alignment with your values and your purpose, that is your protection. You fundamentally cannot navigate or make a decision that isn't going to be in alignment with what's for you when you're in that alignment. So even as you're going into a company and interviewing and showing up that way, right, you'll be able to, right, talk about who you are and your unique value proposition, not based on what you think they want to hear, about who you really are.
I'm really also curious to take this into a kind of adjacent area, because as you and I have talked about, this period right now, I'm just going to call it summer. Here we are, and last day of May, June, July, August are historically, and this is not like a story, I don't want to like get anybody afraid, are not necessarily the peak hiring seasons. It doesn't mean people will not get hired, but it does mean that this is peak interviewing season. Now, crazy as it may sound, this is one of the best times of the year to network. I have lots of reasons why. Second to the holidays, which are clearly a lot shorter than the entire summer. So what would this values piece look like as you might be trying to pull together a pipeline of people that you are networking with? How do you source and use your values to find the alignment with people, companies, opportunities, etc., through the networking season?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So whether or not you're actively looking and in an active search, or, right, feeling a little bit of burnout or feeling that misalignment and getting ready to start before you're ready, this is a great time to be doing that, right? You're moving into the summer season. And what I would say is the next step beyond sort of understanding the problems that you solve, right, by using your values, is how you want to show up. And I think that when we think about how our values then shape our editorial pillars and our content strategy as we move into LinkedIn, like basically demonstrating how you show up and what your values are and broadcasting that to larger networks and organizations that are going to, when there's that alignment, they're going to be drawn towards that, right? So building up that personal brand and that base for yourself where you are showing up in alignment. And I know that this is uncomfortable for a lot of people, but in alignment, right? So that you're attracting and you're opening doors, and that sort of magical thing that happens when you're in alignment with your values, that sort of law of attraction of inviting and bringing in other people who are in alignment with who you are. And so it could be definitely about sharing the problems you need to solve, but it also could be coming up authentically in terms of the content. Like one of my, you guys know this, one of my values is authenticity. I happen to also be an accidental farmer, right? And show up that way through a lot of my content on LinkedIn, which has attracted, shockingly, other people, right? I was talking to a CEO the other day who was like, yeah, I got my first cow when I was 14. And I was like, I birthed one last Tuesday, right? When you show up in the world based on who and how your values lead you, you begin to sort of move away from this sort of like disembodied communication. And as you deepen down, you really begin to connect with other people on a much deeper level.
So as you are talking to people in over the summer, barbecue, informal coffees, et cetera, like how might we be able to probe this and inquire about other people's without being too like, what are your core values? That would be
no, I'll give you a question you can ask them. Instead of, and I love this, right? An awful lot of times we waste so much time getting to know each other through like, what's your story? What's your life story? All those type of things. Couple questions you can ask when next time you're networking. The first one is, tell me about a time when you experienced a great sense of accomplishment, right? And so, and it's so funny. It's the simplest of question. Tell me about a time. Tell me about a time where you experience a great sense of accomplishment, and people will just open up and things will tumble out of their mouths, right? That will allow you to then go like, am I aligned with this person? Am I not aligned with this person, right? It's deepening down the questions and the way that we slow down in order to communicate. The other thing might be is, tell me about, a threshold that you're looking to cross in 2020, 33 or in the next, right? Understanding where somebody is now and where they want to go, what room they want to go into, what they want to open up for themselves. And when you begin to understand those types of things, you can then say, oh, let me activate my network and connect them with this person, or let me connect them with that person. The law of networking isn't necessarily just sort of, we talk about these, the way that the ties, right, the connections. But if you were going into a casual coffee conversation and say, not what your goals are, or what your purpose is, or what your values are, but tell me what threshold you're looking to cross into, right? It'll give you this like really specific picture, right? Visual picture of what this person is trying to accomplish, what challenges they're having. And then you can draw on your network and make connections. And that's really where the alchemy begins to come into play.
I completely agree. Use tools that are not cookie cutter. Like these are central and core, but also, and this is just so important, right? The challenge that so many are experiencing in the marketplace now, and always will be, to be honest with you, is standing out. Is making sure that you are not one of the pack. And so even though these are very core, literally and figuratively, they are very core, they are also unique in the way that they are able to cut through a lot of the BS, right? A lot of that kind of, I call it rhetoric, that same old discussion, it bores people. And it also puts you into a clump, a pile of people that are just doing the same thing over and over and over again. So you and I also talk about what it means to be remarkably different. Your values are always going to be yours. Even if you have the same value, like Courtney and I both have abundance, the way that we articulate it and understand it are separate and unique. Yeah. So don't feel like, ooh, somebody stole my value, because it still has your stamp on it.
And completely, right? Our values are rooted in our experience. And I know in the guise of abundance, right? I'll talk a little bit about how we go find them in terms of what's hiding in plain sight, right? First, you need a list, right? I've been through every card deck, every sort of Brene Brown, every list, the values that I use are in this box. It's called One Core Values. There it is here. You can get it on Amazon or at Best Self. And so there's 125 different words in here, and you have to sort them down to 10 to 15, and then you have to sort them down to 3. And then from there, right, it's hard to coach yourself, right? It's great to have a good thinking partner, right? So then, right, you have to understand what they look like to you, right? Somebody has to be curious enough. So if you pull abundance out, for instance, right, what does abundance look like for you, right?
Right.
And then, right, then as a part of the generative coaching process, it's tell me about a time where you've experienced abundance or scarcity, right? And another time, and another time. And through a process of what is called generative looping, right? It's usually that third one, right? Where you see the light bulbs and the magic go off, and you're like, oh, right? And so when we go deep into our experiences and retrieve them to then sort of validate why we've chosen these cards confidently, right? They are ingrained and integrated in us in a way where, you know, when we feel out of alignment, when we feel like, oh, this is not right, this is not feeling right, you can call upon them and go, oh, right. You know, I was in a situation the other day where I was having this sort of somewhat visceral reaction to something, and it's because I was in a scarcity mindset, and I said, oh no, right? I have chosen specifically abundance as a mindset, as a tool, as an aspirational value for myself that will be critical to my success in my coaching practice. So by just sort of calling on my values to switch my mindset from one situationally from scarcity into abundance, I was able to use that to make a better decision for myself, right? From a place that was deeply rooted in how I wanted to show up in my behaviors and actions.
Yes. So they absolutely are pivotal for decision making in your career, outside of your career, and doing shifts, right? Like that shift that you just talked about. You have been just a huge like cheerleader. I mean, like a career surgeon, helping people to really be able to get and clear away a lot of the gunk that has been holding them back.
Yeah.
Right. And almost like scrape off all of the things that are not serving them. So you have generously offered also a free value session. I put the link in the chat. If you have not done your values, this is the woman that wants and makes this happen so that you have the clarity. If you have done your values, awesome, great for you. Maybe pick another value that you want to focus in on if you want to attend. But please, especially people who are new, take advantage of this opportunity, because again, this isn't something that you're going to find that's mainstream. You really want to be able to use that and powerfully throughout your search and other decisions. Courtney Addy, I could not be more grateful for you and helping me identify my core values: abundance, integrity, and creativity. Those are the three that drive me every single second of every single day. And I love and appreciate all the work that you do with Portfolio Rocket clients. So with that, thank you everybody for being here, and please go ahead and sign up, and we'll see you next week for another blast and a half. Thanks so much, guys.